You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
I swear today I was not feeling great and I took an auto to come to office because I thought that the weather's looking nice. It's not looking sunny. And then I got in the auto and then there was a legit loo ka thapeda on my face.
Oh my God, yes.
Without it looking sunny. So
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Work is so stressful, yeah.
Man, I feel like I'm wasting my youth.
I feel like I just can't sustain relationships.
Not fine. Thanks.
Before we get into it, I must tell you that the audio quality on this one isn't great, but all our guests on today's episode have some very interesting things to say, so I hope you listen in despite it. Also, in the second part of the podcast, I will be speaking to climate activist Disha Ravi, so do stick around for that as well. So today I'm joined here with Priyansha Gupta, who is a full-time doctor and part-time climate anxious person. She's also a really good friend of mine and we've had these conversations a lot, which is why she's here. Say hi, Priyansha.
Hi.
We also have Jashan. She is an environmental policy student. She's also an old friend of mine. Say hi, Jashan.
Hi.
And we have Sadhika, who is the climate change correspondent here at Quint.
hello.
So the reason why I have this bunch of people is because we often have these conversations, but I thought let's just put a mic and let's record it and talk about it.
Climate anxiety, here we go.
So we're all in our 20s and we have grown up writing essays and making charts about climate change and global warming, and we've been very aware of it growing up, but I feel like this thing called climate anxiety is something that we're hearing now, but I think everybody kind of experiences to some degree. So, Priyansha, could you tell me when you say you have climate anxiety, what do you mean? What do you experience?
Personally, it just feels very hard to feel any real hope for the future. As in, even in my personal life, it feels like, why should I work hard? Why should I get married? Why should I have children if all of the world is in danger and can end in 50, 60 years? And also, the having children part, I think, is very common. A lot of young people, including me these days, we are actually like considering not having children at all because we don't want our children to face climate catastrophe.
Or add to it.
So I think that that's how it manifests for me. It also happens that it feels very hard to follow the news also these days. Apathy has set in the way that I feel anxious whenever I read news articles about climate change or we have these many years to fight it or we're doomed and stuff like that. So whenever I read articles like this, I feel anxious. So subconsciously, I'm avoiding following the news at all. So, and that is one way that I'm sort of avoiding enriching my life with information because of this anxiety that I'm feeling.
And it's also kind of difficult to explain because it doesn't affect us as profoundly as it affects other, it's so disproportionate, right? Like we are
Massively.
so privileged. So like when people say, oh, I feel climate anxiety, like us saying, people are like, but what do you have to feel climate anxiety about? Because you're not seeing,
But I believe
affect
that's
you.
the whole... I mean, we feel climate anxiety because we are alive. There are people who are dying of the heat wave. Because we're sitting in the AC, we know that they're dying and hence we are anxious.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and also it's very real, yeah. It's very real.
So even these mics, these lights, like all of that is contributing to it, right? So, I mean, we can't do away with them. And obviously there are luxuries that we don't want to do away with. So do you think that apathy comes from the guilt also of overconsumption and you don't really want to let go of that and then you don't know how to deal with that?
I feel it's also... I mean, this narrative is also manufactured. They want you to feel responsible for what is happening when you actually are not. So a lot of you wearing, eco-friendly fabric and using a bamboo toothbrush is not really going to make much of a difference, and that's the reality. So you can't really do much because, and it's they've shifted the guilt, right? Because it's the massive industries which are causing it. But then you will start questioning them. So they're like, hey, but you want us to do something. What are you doing about it? Then you're like, oh, let me just go to the H&M conscious line and buy my clothes from there. And ultimately, it's not making any difference. But yeah, I mean, coming back to what you were saying, do any of you honestly feel like we can do something?
I mean, I think we can do what we can. You know, what's beyond our control is always going to be that way. It doesn't mean that we give up on even trying. That's my personal view about it. It's why I've chosen to dedicate my career to it. Maybe that's why I feel more of a
Doesn't that absolve you of the guilt?
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe
it just makes you feel better about yourself as a person.
I guess, but at the same time, I contribute what I can, right? It's better than throwing your hands up and already giving up before even trying. It helps me assuage the guilt as well, but it also maybe holds off that wave of anxiety from crashing over me if I feel like I have control over it. So I don't feel as hopeless if I can tell myself, yes, I did my bit.
Yeah, but you have made a career out of it. But for the rest of us, a lot of people who feel for the environment, but the risk to reward ratio is so skewed. Are you willing to give up everything in life? Because everything.
But I think it does matter. If your anxiety is coming from the fact that you feel lack of control or you don't see impact of your actions on what you're doing, don't you think you owe it to yourself to at least try? I don't know if that's making sense, but giving up before even trying seems worse than at least trying. True. And if more of us had that kind of mentality, that would eventually transform into collective action. If everyone gave up before trying, that would never result in collective action.
But do we have the luxury of time for that? To wait around for if everyone, if everyone thinks this way and eventually we'll all collectively take action. Do you think we have that much time?
No, but I feel that the point is that there are two extremes. Have you guys seen The Good Place on Netflix? You remember this one person who did everything right, was growing their own food, their own tomatoes, recycling everything. They were composting all waste, like a zero carbon footprint sort of life. Even they couldn't make it to heaven because that's the world that we're living in. Sabka opportunity cost is such that even if you do everything right, there is something that you will do wrong humongously. Something you're doing is costing somebody else something. That's just how complex the world is. So then nobody is going to be right anyway.
So there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, I get it, but I would still say something is better than nothing, right? The kind of figures you're talking about, we have become so desensitized to them that should motivate us to be even more on top of the small choices that we make every day, the ones we have control over, to be more vigilant with them, that we make the right ones when we can, rather than letting it get to you in the sense of, what does it matter? I'll just pick the worst energy source anyway. When you can, you try to go green, right?
It's personal, right? Also, it's a little personal, isn't it? I mean, you don't have to fix it. You have to deal with your own anxiety at the end of the day because you are going to bed. The world is dying irrespective. You have to deal with your own mental health. So at some point you have to dissociate, and then it'll be a dissonant lifestyle where you're preaching something else and then doing something else. And then, like you said, not giving up on the luxuries you like and still saying, oh, but the world is dying. But I guess eventually it's the journey of accepting that that's how it'll be, right? Otherwise
That is very nihilistic, no?
But otherwise we are all...
Let it be.
No, I'm not saying let it be. I'm saying do what you can. You can't fix the world irrespective. You can fix your anxiety.
Think about that. You wanted to say something.
I actually agree with Jashan here, where I feel like the apathy or even the anxiety that we feel actually plays into the hands of the big players here. And a few decades ago, their strategy was to tell us that it's not real, that climate change is not real. Let's let's live the way we're living, let's do development with regardless of what's happening. And now I think their strategy is to shift the blame from themselves to individuals and say that it is not everyone has to do their own bit to no, like their strategy is to say everyone has to do their own bit, and the big players, they don't have much responsibility. And the apathy comes in when we feel like, but if everyone has to do their own bit and only I am doing my own bit, then how will this ever fix itself? I think I believe in activism here, and I feel like we can do both. We can do small changes in our personal lives while at the same time influencing these big corporations, governments, the big players here to make some real change, real actions to fight this.
Yeah, so like individual action could lead to collective action is what you're saying. Yeah.
And do what you can.
I just so wish if policymakers were having this conversation, how brilliant that would be, no? So I just wanted to ask, as women, because all four of us surprisingly on this podcast are also women, we know how women are unfairly affected by climate change more than men across. Is that also, do you feel sometimes that as women we are more probably perceptive? I don't know. I don't want to say we're more empathetic, but probably that.
We do tend to have more anxiety. Maybe that is maybe there's one more anxiety to add to it.
Brains are just looking for more reasons to be anxious.
To be anxious. No, but you feel as women we're probably more sensitive to the fact that the world is burning.
I think someone who has experienced injustice is more likely to notice injustice in the world around them. And,
very articulate.
As women, we have felt sexism in our own lives, and so it's easier for us to notice more forms of discrimination and injustices and catastrophe in the world. I guess one reason to keep going is to tell yourself that me being anxious and me feeling pessimistic is not going to solve climate change. And
like she said, like even a little bit is better than nothing at all.
And I feel a lot of this anxiety might also come from guilt, like you said. For all I was dissing, action and how probably we should focus on that. I don't feel as anxious because I feel that I'm constantly doing something at least. But my frustration comes from just this absolute rigid. I mean, it's you move out of the house, it's a heat wave. How else does one tell you that climate change is happening? And then to day in and out, just to try to convince people that it's real, it's exhausting. And then beyond that, to make it fun and engaging and relatable and metropolitan friendly and digital user friendly, it's a whole other this thing. So I feel that is there. And personally, like you guys feel more hopeful when you look at solutions. When I look at solutions, most of these solutions are I'm like, oh, but this is very small. Can't be replicated. Money is a problem. Technology is a problem. Can't take it to this village. Can't take it to this country. These third world countries can't do this. All of that. So I feel because my profession, a good journalist needs to be extremely skeptical of things and keep questioning them. So which takes away whatever little hope that you guys can also harbor. I have to give up on that also. And then I feel like absolute, not shit, but like I feel it's bad. I genuinely believe that it's bad. We are far beyond a point when it was too late 10 years ago. We are beyond that also. So now these are massive policy actions that are required. And for them, like today I was recording a video where I said, why am I telling you that Assam floods are climate change? So that the next time you feel empathy for these flood victims or you feel rage for the system for putting them through this, you know that it's climate change. So you ask your leaders for it. Then it makes way to your election manifestos and speeches. And I feel that is something that I can sort of enable a little bit. I can probably 1% contribute to raising the consciousness of the masses and make climate change a political issue. If that happens, something can happen.
how I practice, like my life philosophy is do what you can. That'll help you feel better about there's nothing to be done.
True, yeah. Khao piyo khush raho. That sort of situation.
But not over khao.
Yeah.
So
Healthy khao piyo.
Yeah.
थोड़ा plastic tetra pack कम खरीदो.
थोड़ा
all
मीट
of
मत
that.
खाओ.
हाँ.
अपना खुद का बैग ले जाओ, प्लास्टिक मत लो शॉप से.
Recycle
Even
करो.
like the way that we talk about self-care these days is so short-term oriented. Even taking care of the climate is eventually self-care. So we have to sort of take care of ourselves and make ourselves feel better by taking care of the world around us.
Okay, so before we recorded this podcast, I spoke to Disha Ravi as well. For those of you who don't know, Disha is a young climate activist based in Bangalore, and she's also a member of Fridays for Future India, a youth-led global initiative for climate action. And here are some bits from our conversation. Welcome, Disha. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Anushka. Thank you so much for having me.
Firstly, I want to ask you, what is climate anxiety?
I think eco-anxiety or climate anxiety revolves around the fact that people are generally scared or anxious about how they will be impacted by the climate crisis, or this can extend to their loved ones, their family, and people honestly around the world as well, and just how bad the situation with the planet is getting. So a lot of people's livelihood depends on the fact on various resources that can be impacted by the climate crisis, and this can lead to stress or anxiety, or even other mental illnesses.
Right. And do you ever feel like, what even is the point of you doing your little bit? I mean, in the sense that how do you keep yourself motivated to do your part, or, make personal sacrifices when you don't see it having a significant impact in the larger scheme of things?
Okay, fair question, but I think, and from experience, a lot of people stop seeing it as a sacrifice at some point. Like I personally really enjoy taking the public transport, and I don't see it as a sacrifice. Also, just because I've been used to it, and other things that I had to give up was just eating, food that would come in plastic. There's no way I can give up on it completely, but to a large extent, I have cut down, consumption of food that's in a packet, like excessive packaging. And I don't see it as a sacrifice because often there are alternatives that you can find that are affordable and accessible. If not, people can we've learned to move on to the next best thing. Like I personally used to love eating ice creams, and now I, freeze bananas and put peanut butter and makes things out of it. And I find it really fun personally. And I know a lot of people have found workarounds to what they normally were used to. So a lot of people don't see it as a sacrifice when they do things.
Right. Also, you know how like when we talk about systemic action, if you notice like back in the 50s or 60s when climate crisis really started gaining steam, or even early 2000s when we were in school, the approach of the statistics and data related to climate crisis was always very future oriented, right? It was always about how the future generation won't have enough, or the future generation will suffer because of what is being done now. But do you think this outlook has created a laxness among the older generation when it comes to making and implementing policies, because they see the impact as being something that's far off?
I really do think so, because I don't think a lot of the older generation understand the urgency of the issue. And when they don't understand how urgent and important it is, they're not going to act. So I think one thing we've noticed in general is the older generation loves applauding us. And it's really concerning because we don't want them to praise us. in India, they don't praise anyone, but in other countries, they apparently do. We wouldn't know, but just the fact that this even happens is really concerning because we don't want that. We want them to take action. And they've gotten this whole the young people will save our planet.
Yeah.
And we don't want that burden. That is not on us. It is not on us to save the planet because we didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like they're delegating the responsibility onto you, right? Like it's your problem now, you deal with it.
Yeah, but it's a responsibility that's been pushed on us because of their inefficiency, which we've had to take because it's our present, honestly, and our future at stake. But it's really not our responsibility, and pushing off their responsibility on us is really unfair for so many reasons, especially because we're not going to have. Yeah, we can mobilize. Yeah, we can do a lot of these things. But the decision making power and authority still remains in the hands of really old people. And sometimes even when we do come of voting age, we haven't been able to vote them out because sometimes there aren't any candidates that, put the climate or environmental concerns as a priority. So it's a very complicated spectrum of no one really cares about the environment and they're just pushing it on us to, somehow solve it. Like there's only so much we can do without their support.
So does that make you feel hopeless that the ones who can affect change are not doing it adequately?
I think I refuse to personally give in to climate doomism because data and scientists have pointed to the fact that there is still time and there is still hope as long as we take drastic action. And I think that's what I choose to focus on. And I know a lot of people I work with also experience these emotions because there are so few wins in the climate movement. And trees keep getting cut, mines keep getting dug. And it can seem like we're fighting a losing battle. But we don't have the privilege to stop right now because stopping would only mean that the situation would get much, much worse. And it's not like what we're doing doesn't have impact. And one of my favorite examples was last year in the middle of the pandemic in India, they made amendments to the EIA and they, put out the draft EIA for objections and suggestions. And for the first deadline that they had proposed, like 2 lakh people sent in objections. And I think we got 1 lakh of that just in one day before the deadline. And it was phenomenal. We had never organized that many people to come together for environmental anything, honestly. And all of this was digital because we were all under lockdown. We couldn't go out. And, then they extended the deadline. There were court cases that other people in the movement, in the larger environmental movement, that they had filed for translation of the draft EIA, and they had filed for postponement of the deadline. It really did come together, and the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, they did say that they'll take into consideration the objection and the suggestions, and doesn't mean they've actually taken it into consideration, but just the fact that they stopped temporarily was huge. I would consider this a big win.
Absolutely.
Pretty happy about it. So I think all of these essentially keep us wanting to ensure that we keep fighting.
Lastly, I guess to just sum it up, I'd like to ask, what helps you deal with feelings of climate anxiety? What keeps you going?
I think a large chunk of dealing with the frustration is just working with people who are also working on similar issues. They personally make me feel very, very hopeful because they have a very, very deep love for our planet and for each other and for the community. And I think this is essentially what keeps me going. And I know this is something that helps other people as well. And I do believe that community care is very strong and very necessary.
you so much for joining us, guys. On next week's episode, I'll be joined by two other friends, Shravya and Yash. While Shravya is a self-diagnosed social media addict, Yash is not on any social media platform. And we'll be talking about, you guessed it, social media, and also how it impacts our mental health. So do stay tuned for that.